Welcome MTG friends, I'm Ryan. Let's dive into another deck tech. We're doing Orvar the All Form. It is a mono blue build for Commander EDH. It's a legendary creature shapeshifter. It's a 3/3 that is a changeling. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, if it targets one or more other permanents, that does include lands, you control, create a token that's a copy of one of those permanents. When a spell or ability an opponent controls causes you to discard this card, create a token that's a copy of target permanent. Now that last part is really irrelevant in commander play because Orvar is going to be almost always in our command zone or on the battlefield. There really isn't going to be an occasion where you have him in your hand. So really the only relevant part of this card is the whenever you cast an instance or sorcery spell, if it targets one or more permanents you control, you make tokens. So that's very interesting, very cool. Now we are going to build the next 99 cards around that. Let's dive in. If you're new to the channel, hit subscribe, hit the like button, and the bell. All right, moving oneth. As usual, we have some packages for you. We got protection, just one card in there. Control, a whole lot of control because this is, after all, mono blue. A bit of ramp as well. The land package, as usual. Shenanigans, we got a fair amount of shenanigans going on in this build. Some removal, and then what I'm calling the Orvar portion of it, where it's basically things that are specifically targeting. So let's jumpeth into the deck and let's start with protection. Why not? Why not? All right, Commander's Plate. I really like this card, and when you're playing a mono colored deck, this is a serious consideration. Equipped creature gets +3/+3 and has protection from each color that's not in your commander's color identity. So this creature is going to have protection from every other color. That's pretty bueno. And it costs you 1 and equips a commander for 3. The equip for 5 is kind of, that's gross and not good. But, you know, in a pinch, you can equip for 5. And yeah, whatever. But this is pretty much about our commander. All right, moving on. All right, let's go through the land package real quick. We are in mono blue, so it's mostly just islands. But we have a few other utility cards, like Ancient Tomb, tap for 2. Glasspool Mimic, this is the modal land. On the other side is the blue mana source. But the extra bonus of having a 3-drop, you may have Glasspool Mimic enter the battlefield as a copy of a creature you control, except it's a shapeshifter rogue in addition to its other types. So that's just nice little versatility. This is out of Zendikar Rising. Next up, of course, we are running a slew of basic lands. So it's not going to break the bank to run this commander deck because we're running 28 islands. Almost forgot what an island was. All right, Minamo School at Water's Edge. This is tap for blue or untap target legendary permanent. Now, this can totally be swapped out. This is just a nice little utility card because it comes in untapped and you can untap, do some untapped shenanigans with it. All right, we got Mystic Sanctuary. This is really cool at a Throne of Eldraine. I believe it's also being reprinted in Time Spiral remastered for some weird reason. I don't know why. Mystic Sanctuary enters the battlefield tapped unless you control 3 or more other islands, which is very likely. When Mystic Sanctuary enters the battlefield untapped, you may put target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard on top of your library. So this is just, again, a very nice utility card in blue. All right, Nykthos Shrine to Nyx, because after all, we're going to have lots and lots of devotion. You can tap it for 2 and then add that much mana to your mana pool based off of your devotion in terms of islands. Lovely, lovely for anything that's running devotion type stuff, like monocolors. Seagate Restoration, another one of those modal cards where on the other side it is a untap for 3 damage blue mana source. And you also have the draw cards equal to the number of cards in your hand +1. You have no maximum hand size for the rest of the game. This is a really nice flavored mono blue card for some draw mechanics. Very, very nice card for mid-game, late game, putting cards back into your hand. War Room is also a new one out of Commander Legends. This one is fabulous. For 3, you can pay life equal to the number of colors in the commander's color identity. Draw a card. Serious consideration for any deck that you're putting together that is monocolor for sure, because the downside is very, very minimal. Cackling Counterpart. All right, so we're into the Orvar portion of this. Now, this is going to be anything that's going to target a permanent that you have. So there might be a few in here that you're not familiar with that are going to work really well with this commander. For 3, it's create a token that's a copy of target creature you control, and it's also got flashback for 7. You may cast this card from a graveyard for its flashback cost. So it's a 2-for-1. 2-for-1, folks. And Enervate, it's 2. Tap target artifact, creature, or land. Draw a card at the beginning of the next turn. This is really, really nice and extra spicy for this kind of build with your commander, because you can actually target a land. And if you target a land and your commander's out, you make a token of that land. So it's like this hidden, cool mana ramp in the form of generating tokens of lands. And then you can also do it for creatures as well as artifacts. That is very, very cool. And of course, you draw a card too. Fated Infatuation, 3 blue. Put a token onto the battlefield that's a copy of target creature you control. If it's your turn, scry 2. So just that nice little bonus of 2. I would not recommend this card if you weren't running mono blue, but because of our commander and what we're trying to do and the janky stuff we're doing, this is very reasonable. 3 blue to do this. Yes, sirree. Glamerdye, this one's super interesting with Orvar's mechanics. Change the text of target spell or permanent by replacing all instances of one color word with another. Well, okay. So if somebody's targeting, destroy target, blue creature or blue creature, blah, blah, blah. I mean, that would just be an extra bonus. But this has a lot of versatility with Orvar because we can be targeting anything, which is very cool, and then make a token of that. Quasi-duplicate for 3. Create a token that's a copy of target creatures you control with Jumpstart. You may cast this card from your graveyard by discarding a card in addition to paying its other cost, then exile this card. So again, it's the target part that really matters in this. Now, this one is creature specific, but hey, that's very cool. So not only if Orvar's out, but even if he isn't, you can still create a token copy. So very cool. Teferi's Time Twist for 2. Exile target permanent you control, which does include a land or an artifact or whatever, mana rock, whatevs. Return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. If it enters the battlefield as a creature, it enters with an additional 1/1 counter on it. Now, what's interesting about this is it's mainly intended to target our own stuff, but in a pinch, you could target something that's either going off on the battlefield for your opponent or something you just really got to get rid of, flick it out so that there's no OTK kind of stuff or whatever. So in a pinch, you can use this against your opponent as well. Then we have Thermal Flux for 1. Choose one target non-snow permanent becomes snow until end of turn, or target snow permanent isn't snow until end of turn. Draw a card at the beginning of the next turn's upkeep. So in this build, worst case scenarios, we're drawing a card. Best case scenarios, we're targeting a permanent of any kind, whether that's land or whatever else. And with Orvar out, we get to make a token copy of it. Yes and yes. We likey. We likey a lot. And then there's Twitch for 3. You may tap or untap target artifact, creature, or land. Draw a card. So again, with this whole Orvar concept, it's all about targeting one of our own permanents and creating a duplicate of it in the form of a token. And then rounding off the end of the Orvar Janky Jankersons is Whim of Volrath for 1 with buyback 2. You may pay an additional 2 when you play the spell. If you do, put it into your hand instead of your graveyard as part of the spell's effects. So you can pay 3 and just get it back in your hand and keep doing this. Change the text of target permanent by replacing all instances of one color word or basic land type with another until end of turn. So the key word in here is target. We're targeting. As long as you're targeting something and Orvar is out there, that creates you a token copy. Yes, 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 yes. All right, now we are into the draw portion, and we have Ancestral Vision, a very swimmingly nice card in mono blue. It has to spend 4 for 1 rather than cast this card from your hand, pay 1 blue, and exile with 4 time counters on it. At the beginning of your upkeep, remove a time counter when the last is removed. Cast it without paying its mana cost. Target player draws 3 cards. Excelente. All right, and then next up we have Arcanis the Omnipotent. It's 3 blue, 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 which is a little difficult to pull off if you're not running mono blue, but we are running mono blue. So it's tap, draw 3 cards, or for 4, return Arcanis the Omnipotent to its owner's hand. So it's got a little bit of versatility and really helps out with the draw mechanics. Consecrated Sphinx. A gangster of a card. It is a 4/6 flyer. Whenever an opponent draws a card, you may draw 2 cards. That's right. We're going to keep up with the draw mechanics. Oh, this one is so janky. As of this recording, I really haven't been seeing this much on the standard ladder, but I really like this card. Gadwick the Wizened. Wizened? I think it's Wizened. Wizened. I digress. X blue, 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 legendary creature, human wizard, 3/3. When Gadwick the Wizened enters the battlefield, draw X cards. Whenever you cast a blue spell, tap target non-land permanent an opponent controls. Yes, I like it. I like it a lot. And what's interesting is it says tap target non-land permanent. However, with Orvar, and let's double check together, it's when whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell. So he doesn't go off based off of his mechanics, but you know, it's extra fun, extra shenanigan stuff. All right, now we got to go find it again. Where did it go? I don't know. Scooby Dooby Doo. God is a switch. Draw, draw, draw. There it is. Gadwick. All right, let's bring it back up. All right, moving on from Gadwick, the Wizened Wizard. All right. Magus of Future. 2 blue, 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 2/3. Those are sucky stats, except that it does Cooliosis stuff. Play with the top card of your library revealed. You may play land and cast spells from the top of your library. Oh, looks like it's getting reprinted, but it's originally from Future Side. I think I like that card better. I always like the older ones better. Mystical Tutor, speaking of which, that one is Mirage. And it just puts a sorcery or instant on the top of your library. Search for Azcanta. At the beginning of your upkeep, look at the top card of your library. You may put it into your graveyard. Then, if you have 7 or more cards in your graveyard, you may transform Search for Azcanta. And then on the flip side, it allows you to start pulling cards off of the top of your deck. Such a lovely card. Such a lovely card. Spell Seeker in draw. Whenever Spell Seeker enters the battlefield, you may search your library for an instant or sorcery card with converted mana cost 2 or less. Can anyone say Counterspell? Put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. And we are running Counterspell. Sphinx Ambassador. 5 blue, blue, 5/5 flyer. Yes, a little spendy, little bit, but you know what? Whatever. Whenever Sphinx Ambassador deals combat damage to a player, search that player's library for a card. Then that player names a card. If you search for a creature card that isn't the named card, which you got a pretty good statistical probability of them guessing wrong, you may put it onto the battlefield under your control. Then that player shuffles his or her library. Ooh, yeah. We get to start stealing stuff. I like that. Thada Adele, Acquisitor for 3/2/2, legendary creature, Merfolk Rogue with Island Walk. Just a little added bonus because you're probably going to be playing against somebody that's playing blue. Whenever Thada Adele, Acquisitor deals combat damage to a player, search that player's library for an artifact card and exile it. Then that player shuffles his or her library until end of turn. You may play that card. Oh, I just love when you can do funny things like that in Commander. Agent of Treachery. So now we're in control portion of all of this shenanigans. So for 7, when Agent of Treachery enters the battlefield, gain control of target permanent. At the beginning of your end step, if you control 3 or more permanents you don't own, draw 3 cards. Just gets better and better, that thing. Back to basics. Wow, this thing is fabulous. If you weren't super familiar with it, for 3, you can enchant non-basic lands. Do not untap during their controller's untap phases. Well, guess what, folks? We're running a whole hell of a lot of basic lands, and so this is going to definitely work in our favor. It's basically like the blues version of Blood Moon, you know, basically. Pretty cool. Bribery for 5. Speaking of taking over the opponent's plays, search your target opponent's library for a creature card and put that card into play under your control. Then that player shuffles his or her library. Oh, that's just such a mean thing to do. Start snaking their stuff. All right, more control. Counterspell, of course. Cryptic Command for 4. This is the one that you can choose to counter target spell, or return target permanent to its owner's hand, or tap all creatures your opponents control, or draw a card. So nice versatility all the way back from the Lorwyn set. Desertion. Again, we really like stealing stuff in this build. Counter target spell. If an artifact or creature spell is countered this way, put that card onto the battlefield under your control instead of it to its owner's graveyard. Fierce Guardianship, just a little bit more shenanigans here. If you control a commander, you may cast a spell without paying its mana cost. Counter target non-creature spell. Out of Commander 2020. One of my favorites out of that. Force of Negation out of Modern Horizons. If it's not your turn, you may exile a blue card from your hand rather than pay this spell's mana cost. Counter target non-creature spell. If that spell is countered this way, exile it instead of putting it into its owner's graveyard. Whew. All right. I always am a big fan of spells that could potentially cost you nothing, like Force of Will. And again, if you don't have these and you don't have the budget to have these in here, just swap them out for another counter spell that might cost you 3 instead of janky stuff where you could potentially play it for nothing, those kinds of things. There's nothing wrong with that. Just swap it out if you don't have it. You may pay 1 life and exile a blue card from your hand rather than pay the spell's mana cost. And what's really cool about Force of Will, unlike a few of the others, is this counters target spell, not a non-creature, non-land. So that's very, very cool. Glen Elandra Archmage for 4/2/2 flyer. You can sack it for 1 and counter target non-creature spell. And it has the cool little persist where once it hits your graveyard, it comes back with a -1/-1. So you get to use a 2-for-1. Twofer. It's a twofer. And Mana Drain, of course. Again, swap it out if you don't have it. Counter target spell at the beginning of your next main phase. Add an amount of colorless equal to the spell's converted mana cost. Very, very awesomest Maximus card right there. Propaganda to slow down our opponents that are tribal or really trying to hit you with a lot of wide creatures. Creatures can't attack you unless their controller pays 2 for each creature they control that's attacking. Royal Elemental, right in line with our commander. It's got flying landfall. Whenever land enters the battlefield under your control, you may gain control of target creature for as long as you control Royal Elemental. Now, this doesn't make our commander trigger or anything. It just works really well and synergizes with the whole idea of us snaking stuff from our opponents, really taking over and control of the board. Sower of Temptation. Boy, when I used to play against this in Standard way back when, I hated this card. I hated this fairy deck. You've probably heard me say it in other episodes about the fairy control aggro craziness in the Lorwyn block. Whenever Sower of Temptation comes into play, gain control of target creature as long as Sower of Temptation remains in play. So at very least, it's going to control the board for a few turns. At very best, they're not going to be able to remove Sower of Temptation, and you just keep a hold of one of their creatures. Spelljack is super crazy. It's 3 blue. Counter target spell. If it's countered this way, remove it from the game instead of putting it into its owner's graveyard. As long as it remains removed from the game, you may play it as though it were in your hand without paying its mana cost. Wow. If it has X in its mana cost, X is 0. So you get to counter it and then play it. I mean, yes. I love it. All right, a little bit more control for you. Swan Song, counter target enchantment, instant, or sorcery spell. Its controller puts a 2/2 blue bird creature token with flying onto the battlefield. Yes. Another staple in blue. Treachery. Oh, man. Yeah, we got a lot of 5-drops. I do realize that. But these are very control-oriented. You're probably not going to be making friends when you play this deck. But you know what? You're probably already friends with them anyways, so they can take it. They got thick skin, right? When Treachery comes into play, untap up to 5 lands. You control enchanted creature. I just love the fact that it gives you mana back, and you take a creature, and then you have enough mana to deal with whatever's going on. Oh, wowzers. Wowzers, wowzers. And Vedalken Shackles for 3. It's not in blue per se, but it is just janky enough where we have included it. You may choose not to untap Vedalken Shackles during your untap step. For 2, tap, gain control of target creature with power less than or equal to the number of islands you control for as long as Vedalken Shackles remains tapped. So we are definitely running plenty of blue and plenty of islands for this to be very efficient. Now we are into removal, and of course we are in blue, so we are certainly running Cyclonic Rift. Return non-land permanents you don't control to their owner's hand, or for 7, you do it to all your opponents for all of their non-land permanents. Ugh, gross. Grossly awesome, but gross. Pongify. If you need to really stabilize quick, destroy target creature, it can't be regenerated. Its controller creates a 3/3 green 8 creature token. Scourge of Fleets, right in line with the super jank we're doing in this deck. Whenever Scourge of Fleets enters the battlefield, return each creature your opponents control with toughness X or less to its owner's hand, where X is the number of islands you control. That's going to be really, really effective. All right, and Tidespout Tyrant, 5, 6, 7, 8. Ugh, my God, is that expensive. Flying Djinn, 5/5. Whenever you cast a spell, return target permanent to its owner's hand. And that's why. And that's why we have it. So it's a late game beater of thy soul of your opponent. So yes sir, yes sir. Fencer Shaper Savant for 4. A very nice staple in blue. It's a legendary human wizard with flash. Whenever Fencer Shaper Savant comes into play, return target spell or permanent to its owner's hand. That's right. Return target spell or permanent to its owner's hand. So that could even be a land if you want. I like it. I like it. Baral, Chief of Compliance. Boy, this is just such a janky blue card. Instant and sorcery spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. Woo! Price reduction. I like it. Whenever a spell or ability you control counters a spell, you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card. And we're running a good amount of counter spells. So, yeah, this could very well come in handy. All right, and then we got some Rampalicious Ramp. Extraplanar Lens for 3 with imprint. When it comes into play, you may remove a target land you control from the game. Whenever a land with the same name as the imprinted, so basically island. Whenever a land with the same name as the imprinted card is tapped for mana, its controller adds 1 mana to his or her mana pool of any type that land produces. So doubling up on the islands, yo. On the islands. Gilded Lotus, yep. Goes without saying what this is, right? Tap it for 3. Oh, Hull Breacher. Good old Hull Breacher. Double duty on this one with flash. It's a 3-drop 3/2. If an opponent would draw a card except the first one they draw in each of their draw steps, instead you create a treasure token which you can crack for mana. Yay! And on top of that, that only affects your opponents. So if you have like Sphinx out or something, you're still getting multiple cards. It's bueno. It's bueno, people. All right, Jeweled Lotus. If you got it, run it. If you don't, swap it out. Sack it for 3 mana of any one color. Mana Crypt. Again, if you have it, run it. If you don't, do a Mind Stone or something else like that. Mana Crypt, you tap it for 2. Costs you 3 damage if you lose a flip of the coin. Nyx Lotus is specifically because we're in mono blue, or a mono color. Enters the battlefield tap, choose a color, which would be blue. Add an amount of mana of that color to your devotion. Now, this is how we're going to start teasing out some of those higher costing spells, is through things like this Nyx Lotus. Rhystic Study, yep, a staple in blue. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, you may draw a card unless they pay 1. Sapphire Medallion. Any mono color should be considering the medallions. Your blue spells cost 1 less to play. All right. Soul Ring. Yep. And let's get through some shenanigans. All right. You may have Clever Impersonator enter the battlefield as a copy of any non-land permanent on the battlefield. I love how versatile this is. This isn't necessarily a creature. It's any permanent that's not a land. Deadeye Navigator, in case we want to keep flicking things in and out, as long as Deadeye Navigator is paired. Whoop. Oh, look at that. Somebody's commenting on one of our other episodes. As long as Deadeye Navigator is paired with another creature, each of those creatures has 2. Exile this creature, then return it to the battlefield under your control. Very versatile card. Jin Gitaxias Core Augur. Yes, this is 10 mana, but we're gonna really tease out the mana to get this disgusting card out into play. It's got flash. At the beginning of your end step, draw 7 cards. Each opponent's maximum hand size is reduced by 7. So if they're at 7, it gets reduced by 7. Do you see where we're going with this? This is a crazy card. This card wins games. It's also cost you 10, so that's pretty bananas. Phyrexian Metamorph, also incredibly versatile. You may have it come into the battlefield as a copy of any artifact or creature on the battlefield. That includes your opponents. So yes sir. Except it's an artifact in addition to its other types. So we're totally groovy with this. And it's only going to cost you 3 because that 4th pip can be in the form of 2 life. Sakashima of 1,000 Faces. That sounds like it should be a song. Sakashima of 1,000 Faces. Yep, something like that. Human Rogue. You may have Sakashima of 1,000 Faces enter the battlefield as a copy of another creature you control, except it has Sakashima of 1,000 Faces' other abilities, and the legend rule doesn't apply. Is anybody watching this that's old school like me and remembers the legend rule used to affect your opponent as well? So if you had a legendary creature out and then they play that legendary creature, they would cancel out and both die. I remember those days. I think those days should still exist, but I understand why they changed the rules. All right, put in the comments if you remember that, and if you've survived this long in the episode. Snapcaster Mage. Flash. Whenever Snapcaster Mage enters the battlefield, target an instant or sorcery card in your graveyard gains flashback. Till end of turn, the flashback cost is equal to its mana cost. Yes, sir. All right, a few more shenanigans like this one. Hey, do you like taking extra turns? Well, this is one way to do it. And it's got that extra miracle where it's only for 2. You may cast this card for its miracle cost when you draw it if it's the first card you drew this turn. So, I mean, that's kind of luck of the draw. Yeah, I don't know why I put that in quotes. But even without that, it's still bueno. Yeah, it does cost 7, but it has the potential of costing you 2. I like it. Thassa Deep Dwelling. We're running this one specifically because it can start flicking our creatures, especially like Agent of Treachery. Oh, that's gross. That's gross. In fact, that's why it got banned, I believe, is there was a standard deck that had Thassa that would flick Agent of Treachery. It was a super gross deck. I really thought it was funny. I didn't run it myself. All right. Back to the actual card. At the beginning of your end step, exile up to one another creature you control, then return that card to the battlefield under your control. Or you can, for 4, tap another target creature. Yeah, buddy. All right, Thieving Skydiver at a Zendikar Rising. Oh, there needs to be a place for this card in Commander decks because it's just that funny and cool to steal stuff. And we're stealing a lot of stuff in this deck. Whenever Thieving Skydiver enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, gain control of target artifact with converted mana cost X or less. Mainly, you're looking for their mana rocks or any kind of jank they got going on with artifacts. If that artifact is an equipment, attach it to Thieving Skydiver. Or you could steal people's swords. I mean, yeah, you could do that too. That would be super janky. Or what's even funnier is you could like steal, I don't know, like Swiftfoot boots or anything, giving them haste or shroud. Or that's just funny. I think it's funny. Do you think that's funny? Time Warp, another one where you can take an extra turn. What? All right, Torrential Gearhulk for 6/5/6 flash. Whenever Torrential Gearhulk enters the battlefield, you may cast target instant card from your graveyard without paying its mana cost. If that card would be put into your graveyard this turn, exile it instead. Just a lot of reoccurring abilities of playing your cards more than once. And that brings us full circle, folks. All right, Orvar the All Form. Hope you enjoyed this. If you have any thoughts, ideas, changes, swaps, anything and everything, hey, this is a back and forth with you all, with the subscribers and you newcomers. So yeah, make sure you put in the comments if there's a combo that I didn't think of, or if there's a swap, or if you really dig what we're doing. We like to hear about that too. If you don't like us, well, don't say that you don't like us. Say something more fun than that. Hopefully you do. All right, thanks for tuning in. Check out our other episodes. Peace.